What is margin shorthand property? Well, with margin top, margin right, margin bottom, and margin left CSS properties, you can set distance between selected HTML element and elements that are on the top, right, bottom, and left side of that HTML element. So basically you can set that distance, but with the 4 CSS properties. With the margin shorthand CSS property, you can set also these 4 distance, but like 1 CSS property. For margin shorthand, first value represents margin top, second value represents margin right, third value represents margin bottom, and the fourth value represents margin left. Okay, let's see some examples. Okay, for this part I have already prepared simple HTML document. Our HTML document has doc type declarational value HTML, which means that we are using HTML version 5. Then we have HTML block, and inside of it we have head and body HTML elements. Inside of head, we have title that represents title for our HTML document, and style block with the styles that we will apply on our body elements. Inside of the body, we have 3 simple paragraphs. We have paragraph on the top, paragraph on the middle, and paragraph on the bottom. Every single paragraph has ID, and we will use ID values to select every single paragraph and to apply some CSS styles on it. So for our first or top paragraph, we'll create border that is red. For our middle paragraph, we'll create border that is green. And for our bottom paragraph, we'll create border that is blue. I saved this document like index.html on the desktop. So let's minimize our text editor. And this is our index page, so let's open it. Okay, this is how our web page looks like for now. We have our 3 paragraphs and its borders. So now, for our middle paragraph, let's create some margins on the top, margin on the right, bottom, and the left side of this paragraph. Okay, so for our middle selector, let's define margin top with value 40 pixels, then margin right with value 20 pixels, then margin bottom with value 40 pixels, and margin left with value 20 pixels. Okay, let's save this. Let's go back in our web browser and let's refresh it. So now we have our margin on the top, right, bottom, and left side. Okay, let's analyze our web page. So let's click on right click and let's click on the inspect. Okay, so now on the right hand side you can see structure of our HTML document. Let's expand head, let's expand body, and styles as well. Okay, so basically these are styles that we have defined, and inside of our middle selector we have all these margins that we have defined. Okay, down here if we click on our middle paragraph, we can see all these margin properties and we can uncheck it just to see how our paragraph will look like without it. Okay, so basically we have 4 margin properties for our paragraph. So how we can simplify this? Now inside of our middle selector, let's define shorthand CSS property or margin. So this is margin shorthand property, and it takes 4 values. Basically, it takes all these values. So first value will be top margin, second value will be right margin, third value will be bottom margin, and the last value will be left margin. Now let's replace these words with real values. So instead of top, let's set 40 pixels. Okay. Now we can remove our margin top. Instead of right, let's set 20 pixels. Okay. Now we can remove margin right. Instead of bottom, let's set 40 pixels. Okay, let's remove margin bottom. And the last one is margin left, and that is 20 pixels. Okay, let's remove it. So basically this is how we use margin shorthand property. We have set top, right, bottom, and left margins. So let's save these changes. Let's go back in our web browser and let's refresh it. So if you take a look on our middle paragraph, you can see nothing has happened. Basically, we still have all these margins. But if you take a look inside of our styles, you can see that we have set these styles with just one CSS property. You can always change these values. You can use arrows up to increase or arrow down to decrease this value. Of course, you can do it for any of those properties. And please be aware of that you can use negative values as well that will overlap your paragraphs. Okay, so this is how we can use margin shorthand property to set 4 different margins like one CSS property. But with margin shorthand property, you can set just 2 values as well. So how that? For example, if you're using margin shorthand and just 2 values, first value will represent margin top and margin bottom, and second value will represent margin right and margin left. So in our previous case, margin top and margin bottom are 40 pixels. So let's set it here. Okay. And margin right and margin left are 20 pixels. So let's set it here. Okay, now we can remove our second margin shorthand property and let's save our changes. Basically, we are using just 2 values to set 4 margin properties. So let's save it. Let's go back in our web browser and let's refresh it. So once again, we have our margins on the top, margin on the bottom, and right and left margins. If we click on our middle paragraph, down here you can see that we are using just 2 values to set all these margins. Okay. And also, for margin shorthand property, we can use 3 values. In that case, first value will represent margin top, second value will represent margin right and left, and third one will be margin bottom. So in our previous case, margin top is 40 pixels, margin bottom is also 40 pixels, and margin right and left are 20 pixels. Okay, we can remove our margin shorthand property with 2 values. Let's save this. Let's go back in our web browser and let's refresh it. If you take a look, nothing have happened because we still have the same properties, but now we are using 3 values. So if you click on the last value and use arrow up, you can see that we are affecting only margin bottom. Or if we do that for our middle or second value, this is gonna affect our margin on the right and left part of our paragraph. Okay, so this is basically how we can use margin shorthand property to set all available margin properties.
Thanks for watching this tutorial, and I hope this was helpful to you. If you like our work, please become our Patreon or simply donate or PayPal. Please remember, even a little from you means a lot for us. You can follow us on our Twitter and Instagram profiles, and please don't forget to subscribe on our YouTube channel, because on our YouTube channel, knowledge is waiting for you.